This is Aisle 42. Welcome back to Aisle 42. In this episode, we chat with Arzeena Hamir, a dedicated farmer, community leader, and advocate for local food systems. Arzeena shares her journey from studying crop science and working internationally to settling into a rural community and owning an organic farm. We dive into the challenges and nuances of small-scale farming, and we discuss cooperatives, ecological practices, profitability, and the consumer obsession with perfect-looking produce. Okay, let's get into it with Arzeena from LUSH Valley Food Action Society, because the future of food starts now. Arzeena, we don't go very far back. Our friendship is new, but we found a lot of common ground when we did connect at a policy convention a couple of months ago. So I'm excited to have this conversation. And I'm going to kick things off with the big question, and that is, what's one change in the food system that would excite you the most?
Ooh, I think if we could see a permanent support for local food, like primary products, I think to me that would make a huge difference all around. And by permanent support, I mean, right now we're seeing a really big surge in interest in locally grown everything because of the tariffs that are happening across the board, across the line. And we saw a similar surge during COVID. So farmers are not unused to this. But if there was any way to make this more permanent, because as soon as tariffs are lifted, farmers know that people will start to choose differently. And by permanent, what I would love to see is actually within government policy, local procurement include food products. And so that when you have hospitals and schools and colleges and all of our public institutions purchasing, that a minimum 30% of that food purchase be from within British Columbia and hopefully within the local food shed of that institution.
I love it. You just nailed like three of my questions, but we're going to go deeper on all of those things.
Excellent.
So I'm not
Excellent.
worried, but you answered as I hoped and expected. And so I appreciate being able to have this conversation with you because I think it's important. And it isn't just about food security on a high level or some sovereignty or some elbows out, rah, rah. It's about an ecosystem that's better for everyone. And I think our communities need this type of conversation and they need this type of action. So I'm excited to dive into that. So for listeners who don't know who you are, do you mind sharing a little bit about what you do and what it is that brought you to the place that you feel like you have to do more of this?
I grew up in Richmond. My dad was in import export and my mom was a teacher, but I was really drawn to agriculture and did my undergraduate in crop science at the University of Guelph. Met my husband when I was studying there, and we worked internationally. So I've lived and worked in Thailand, in India, in Jamaica, Bangladesh. We came back to Canada in the 90s. And from then, I started working in food security, in supporting local food systems. And recently, and I've just left this organization, I was with the Investment Agriculture Foundation for a few years as a project manager. And that's where I actually got to see how our public dollars, our tax dollars, are used to create programs that support farmers and food processors. So I'm back to working in food security again, but I've come full circle, but I've had a taste of a lot in the food system. And I also run my own organic farm. So my husband and I own Amara Farm, which is located in the Comox Valley.
Now you're going to have to define food security because I feel like, people like us throw this around quite a bit. It's sort of a very common catchphrase, buzzword to use. But I wonder if for the everyday person out there who goes grocery shopping twice a week, that, is looking at their bank account, that is thinking about feeding their children. And then for those that struggle with those things, what does food security look like from your perspective?
Well, you've really touched on like a really big part of that. It is the ability to access affordable, healthy food for you and your family at all times. And so that means that during winter, when we know prices generally go up for fresh food, And it means regardless of where you live in Canada as well. So basically, food for all at all times.
Traveled in places in the world where the further you get away from a city center, those food costs just go up and up and up. And to the point where, like, fresh vegetables and fruit is basically an absolute luxury for so many people. And so that's so tricky.
In Canada, we have the technology now that should no longer be a thing, right? That you don't even need land anymore to be able to produce fresh fruits and vegetables. But really, it looks like it's political will and support for communities that, like you said, are far from our distribution systems and where the cost of fruits and vegetables is just through the roof. So we need to maintain and ensure that all Canadians have access to healthy food.
And you have your own farm. I'm curious what you grow, produce, raise, nurture. Do you have a Instagram feed where you cuddle cows or goats, or like Kevin Bacon play guitar for your animals?
Not that I recall, but we have had some fun things like we were primarily a vegetable and fruit farm, and now nuts. Hazelnuts are the newest crop. At one time, we were growing over 47 different fruits and vegetables. It was a lot. We ran a full CSA, a community supported agriculture program from our farm that required a lot of diversity of products. And we've scaled back a little bit. Neil and I are in our mid 50s. So, what we've now done is we are primarily focusing on our perennial fruits and vegetables and nuts. And we've leased out the vegetable side of the farm to a young couple who are just getting their feet under them. And by next year, we fully imagine that they're going to be going gangbusters on growing vegetables. So, no sheep cuddling or fun things like that. But we did start at our farm, the Comox Valley Farmer or the Comox Valley Garlic Festival. And that has now emerged as its own thing. And that happens in August. So lots and lots of garlic. We still have lots of fun, beautiful things happening, just not a lot of furry creatures except for my two dogs.
I'll cuddle garlic.
Yeah.
I would do that. I would do that for you. I would sing to garlic.
Stroking the garlic as it grows. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I would make clothing out of it. I
It
love
is the
garlic.
best. It's my favorite vegetable to grow.
Yeah, it maybe sometimes to a fault, but I do love it. It's great that you guys grow it. And I think festivals of any kind around agriculture can be a really wonderful way to gather a community, to celebrate the things that we grow and to celebrate the people that grow them. And no, that's really cool. I've been to your neck of the woods a few times, well, many times actually. I do a lot of camping. I carry on past, go up north on the island, do a lot of camping up in that area, and I love it. So that's really cool. But when we think of these farmers, I mean, I've been around agriculture my whole life, and my family had farms, and co-ops were a very. I'm not specifically talking about the store just yet, but like gatherings of farmers that sort of all contribute to one governing body that sort of gathers up produce, gathers up things, and then redistributes them and sells them to at a wholesale rate. These are not new. That's not a new thing, but I worry that it's actually becoming almost antiquated, and that we're seeing some of these co-ops really struggle to support farmers, and everything's just getting more expensive, and the path to market seems to be breaking down at a time that we need it to work better than ever. What do you see on that side?
I've had some time to study cooperatives as well. I worked with Van City on this about 8 years ago, studying the cooperative movement in Italy. And we desperately need farmers to work together and access the dollars for infrastructure that farmers really can't access on their own. I have started a couple of organizations. One is a cooperative that works off of my farm, whereby we have about 5 farms now that are marketing collectively. Like, as much as I enjoy going to the farmers market every Saturday, it's nice to have a day off sometimes on a weekend and to be able to go camping during the summer months. And so marketing cooperatively allows farmers to take some time off during the summer months, to share in the costs of tent and all of the infrastructure, coolers, trucks, wash stations. We have a system that we share a lot of our equipment because we've built it up over time. And we realize that new farmers are really struggling to be able to afford all of that infrastructure. So for us, it's almost like a farm incubator program that we have going on where we're just asking farmers to concentrate on the growing. And then when it comes to the marketing, we'll take over and you get paid. And so, that's what I would love to see more of. I think one of the issues is that there seems to be within the North American culture this desire to constantly get bigger and bigger. And I think that there is a point when you start to lose the democratic voice of individual farmers when you get so big, and you need management. And I've got BC Tree Fruits in mind, right? The demise of that cooperative, over 400 members, where I think management and the membership really there was a big disconnect. So instead of constantly having to grow and grow, I mean, why not have a number of small cooperatives, regional cooperatives that meet the needs of farmers, and then, once you're established and stabilized, then you can consider whether or not you want to grow. But growth for the sake of growing, I think, is a really big issue that we have to consider. That maybe it's just not appropriate for all types of cooperatives or groups of farmers. But absolutely, hazelnut. That's a new crop for us in the Comox Valley. The province really put a big effort into encouraging farmers to plant hazelnuts by subsidizing the cost a few years ago. So we now have like almost 20 acres of hazelnuts that are going to be coming into production here. And, a dozen or so farmers who are all trying to figure out how they're going to sell this nut that, quite frankly, needs to be shelled before there's a good market for it. And shellers are running anywhere between $30,000 and $40,000. That's a lot of money for an individual small farm. But it makes way more sense if you are working collectively. So those are the types of like coming together of farmers that I'm really trying to encourage.
That's so cool. Yeah. And it seems like at the food system side, everyone talks about scale and growth and doing it all faster and bigger and export markets and all these wonderful, you know, very GDP like conversations. But the reality is that you can only do this type of stuff at a commercial or industrial level in so many places and spaces and with so much investment. When the small farmers go away, and that land turns into suburbs or just is abandoned, we lose a piece of our humanity, don't you think?
Oh, not just our humanity. I mean, I actually think of like food. You literally are what you eat. If you think about the vitamins, the minerals that you are getting from your food, that is coming from the soil. So, to be able to eat something that is grown here from this place, I'm literally eating the minerals of the soil from here. I'm becoming, more connected with this land when I eat food from this land. So it's also a very physical connection as well as spiritual and emotional. So all kinds of important connections are lost when you no longer know where your food is coming from.
You win the Poetic Answer of the Year award, by the way. Well done. Let's stay with the nutrient side. Let's stay with the soil side. When we look at things like organic and regenerative organic or regenerative farming, or all these wonderful words that get used to describe the hopefully the thoughtful and careful, use of chemicals or tools or supplements or whatever it is. When you look at small farmers, small scale farmers, do you feel like that element is easier for them to embrace or it's infinitely harder for them to embrace?
Oh, that's a really good question. And it's not really one that I've thought about at scale. What I do know is that organic farmers, really do concentrate on the health of their soil. And in order for them to, continue farming ecologically, healthy soil means plants that are less susceptible to disease and to pests. It all starts with the soil. But I know there are also practices within the organic sector, especially in the vegetable side. Rototilling, we do disturb soil in order to plant things like carrots that need a really fine seed bed. And I've seen some farms try and implement regenerative vegetable practices, and it requires about 5 times more labor. And that's just where I'm like, financially, this just does not make sense. I know ecologically it does, but I don't know anybody who would be able to afford this carrot if I farmed this way, right? So I know, like, on a commercial scale, and small scale farmers still need to make a profit in order, or at least have their costs paid for. So few farmers pay themselves, by the way, when they put together their pricing. So when I say a profit, that's basically what farmers are paying themselves. In order for them to do that, they really have to look at their labor costs. And for farming, it is all about labor, quite frankly, and how if in order to keep food affordable and accessible to people, there are some compromises that have to be made with the technology that we have right now. I don't spray all of my weeds with Roundup in order to not rototill. So here are some, checks and balances. Like, I'm not sure at what scale fully regenerative, like, so that there's no soil disturbance, where your cover crop, your soil is protected all the time. Right now, I can see that working on the large scale on grain farms, for example, or with beef production, with rotational grazing. But with vegetables, it seems there's a really big tension there about how to produce in a way that is still practical.
It
Yeah.
is a balance for sure. When we talk about scale, let's also talk about the size of the produce that's being made. I was at the grocery store 2 days ago, and I went to go get some sweet potatoes, and they were the size of a football, each of them. And next to them were these carrots that didn't really, they looked like something from an animated film. They were just gigantic. Now maybe that's a breed that I'm not aware of, but anyway, it looked weird. It looked like from some dinosaur movie or something. Prehistoric is how it looked. What is, the consumer sentiment out there is they want big and they want shiny. They want their tomatoes to have a gloss on them. What are we going to do about the food system when everything is sort of made to look, very unrealistic?
Yeah. And here's where I was hoping, a few years ago, Loblaws made the commitment to selling like irregular vegetables and like these inglorious, weirdly shaped stuff that would normally get either composted or, maybe moved into the food processing side, that people would be willing to purchase, you know, food, vegetables and fruit that maybe cosmetically don't look, like these fantastical vegetables you've seen. And I guess I have a little bit of an immunity at the farmers market, because I am finding people are attracted to the flavor of produce more so. And it can have, because we're organic, yes, we'll have some leaves that have small holes in them sometimes. And I think my customers are very aware that if it's too perfect looking, something has gone wrong. Like, that is not a food product that is part of the ecology or any, is there's something that's been sprayed or that's been pumped into the vegetable to make it look that way. So I yeah, I really hope that, people don't lose that aspect of, like, what does this taste like? And choose flavor, and because with flavor comes nutrition, as we know. These things that we're picking up within carrots, for example, I'll use carrots because that is the one vegetable that people can really taste the difference between a locally grown, organically raised carrot versus like a more industrially raised one. The flavor just really stands out. And that's what something that our customers are really looking for. But I know not everybody shops at the farmer's market. And so I think we need to do a better job at really pushing the things that matter versus which is not size, quite frankly. Yeah.
Many years ago, I was in food service, and I remember thinking so many times back then when you glean from the people that you are learning from and that are above you in the sort of the hierarchy of a kitchen. And the chefs I worked with, many of them, especially a couple of them, if they saw really shiny vegetables, they were angry because they're like, they've done something to this. Like, this isn't going to be good. If the garlic, not garlic, sorry, the ginger, if it just looked a little too pretty, they would just be, they're like, nope, send it back. Whereas at the grocery store, it's like almost like it's merchandised, right? Like it's on display. Like
Well, we
it's,
know, right, that, more so in the EU, but I think here too, if the curve well, I'm gonna use long English cucumbers, for example. Like, if there is any sort of curve in a cucumber, that's rejected because we're so used to these straight, pencil straight cucumbers, and they don't grow like that naturally. A few do, but often they do curve, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with the flavor. But it's so sad that we constantly are rejecting fruits and vegetables just for the way that they look.
I agree. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for the time. I have a feeling we could probably talk for hours on these things.
Yes.
So, very cool. And I'm glad we're connected and I appreciate all of the good things that you're doing and that you're doing it on your farm.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And, the ocean can only provide us with so much. When we go back into the laboratory here, what's the future for seafood? Can we cultivate prawns? Can we cultivate fish meat? What can we do from that perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've got a portfolio company that's the largest at the largest cultivated seafood producer in the world. So they merged two companies in the space. I think it's still early. You've had a few plant-based startups in the space that have kind of come and gone. You've got smaller producers that are doing things locally that are delivering really good kind of plant-based options. Save to Seafoods out of Victoria has some incredible products. I just launched some new tuna and stuff and spreads. But I think on a larger scale, in some cases, like from a cultivated meat standpoint, it's easier to cultivate fish just because of the type of meat it is. Like you're not. I think the hardest is definitely a steak with the marbling and the different layers and all that kind of stuff. Whereas I don't want to say anything's relatively straightforward, but I think within the next few years we're going to start seeing cultivated fish products hit the market and them being very close to the real thing.
And certainly the safety of seafood is always, I love eating sushi, but I'm picky on who I buy my sushi from or where I go. And there are places now where, maybe I used to buy sushi there, but I don't anymore because you have one bad experience and it goes
Yeah.
south. But it kind of feels like, maybe to your point earlier around food safety, is actually one of the most interesting outcomes that could be produced out of the lab, where there's a lot more control, there's a lot more careful processes. And if the product can handle distribution and processing and storage better, then it actually is quite the technology, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's absolutely the opportunity to during the production process tweak things, and it's significantly more sterile. Like you look at those feedlots you're talking about, they're covered in shit. They're getting pumped full of hormones, and it's not yeah not a super sterile environment. So yeah, I think all of these things can be done, and these products can be designed to tick these boxes to be more shelf stable. It's really just a matter of scaling, of hitting a price point that makes sense, and of educating consumers. Like how is it better that it's produced in a lab because it's cleaner, it's more sterile, it's this and that. And I think it's going to take a lot of time, and there'll be different adoption curves, and some people will be all over it. Some people will, not touch it until they see it at the local A&W.
Well, let's make that our last question then. How do we influence consumers' perceptions around this stuff? Alternative proteins, if it's based on a soybean or a fava bean, like that seems relatively simple in comparison to, something growing in a bioreactor. So how is the industry going to influence consumers?
Good question. I think, like for us, at at the various companies that were, the most important thing is just getting product in people's mouths and delivering that positive experience. So you can talk about it all you want. People are either going to listen or they're not. But if you can give them something delicious and they can be pleasantly surprised in a lot of cases, oh wow, that was plant-based, it tasted just like this or that, and leave that positive impression with them, then that's going to influence their future decision making. They're going to be more open to these types of products in the future. So I would say keep putting out great products and getting as many people as possible to try them in different settings and formats, and talk about why these are better. Talk about the health benefits, the environmental benefits, obviously the ethical kind of benefits to the animals, without beating someone over the head with it, or being too preachy. I think that's always the fine line, is how do you kind of talk about why you're doing what you're doing, and without kind of guilt tripping people.
Well, and I think for those that are ultimately concerned about animal welfare, if that's one of their primary concerns and why they choose the products that they do choose, I think this can be a really wonderful solution for that consumer. And you won't have to educate them very long. They'll get it really quickly. And those might be some of those early adopters. But I agree with you 100%. It's going to come down to, do people enjoy putting it in their mouth? Everything else after that, can come and go. But it's like, do they want it? Mitchell, thanks for this conversation. So good. So appreciate everything that you're doing and that your team is investing in so many innovative companies. It's been great to chat.
Perfect. Yep. Thanks so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this conversation. I hope it inspired you to take a closer look at the producers and the growers close to you, and to support them with your wallet, filling your fridge and your cupboards with the best your community has to offer. That's it for me. I'm Corbin Hebert. I'll see you in the future.